afternoon, everyone. Thank you guys for being here. We have a very special guest, and pretty soon we'll actually be able to have this connected and we'll be able to see the presentation. But I'm very excited to welcome Reverend Tim Forbess and as well Gloria Hurwitz. It's close enough to what we have, right? Hurwitz. But we are thrilled that they are here, and actually I'm going to invite Patty Caruso forward to introduce Tim because she's the one who put me together with him, and we now have this relationship. So thank you for putting us in touch.
Thank you, everyone, and it's an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce Tim. He's the CEO of Bailey Company, and his focus on projects that promote affordable housing, neighborhood redevelopment, environmental concerns, and clean, healthy food production and sustainability. His most recent endeavor has been saving the historic Longfellow School of Dayton, Ohio, as one of the longest planned LGBTQ plus inclusive senior living communities in the world. The Longfellow Commons community will be a beacon in the Grafton Hill neighborhood, the city of Dayton, and the LGBTQ plus community. Right? I just like to say Q plus, actually. But he does so many great things for this community. I mean, this is just a few. He's originally from Tennessee, and we are honored to have him in our community and doing all the good things he does. And I'm going to let him speak up and tell us about all the wonderful things that he is doing to help make Dayton even a better, stronger community than it is.
With or without technology, we're going to be fine. So I can give you that assurance. Rabbi Karen and Congregation Temple Israel, I just thank you for the very kind invitation to be included on this very holy and this very sacred day during this very sacred season. I've been reflecting with you over the last few days. I've been praying with you. I've been rededicating myself to God's hope and hoping that God's hopes might be fulfilled in my life and particularly in the coming year. Presenting anything on behalf of a really incredible neighborhood and talking about watching it rebound into vitality is just a joy. And it's so fun to be able to bring good news and to spill out a little bit of a vision for a future that is impactful and exciting. I serve a small congregation continually. I have made that a point of my ongoing discipline. In a recent conversation with my own parish, we dove into the First Kings passages around Naboth and his vineyard. In my mind's eye, I use the lens of Naboth's vineyard when discussing Lower Salem Avenue, a gorgeous neighborhood until Ahab came. Ahab brought disinvestment. Ahab brought disinterest. Ahab brought poverty, abandonment. Ahab was working against the lives of those relying on Naboth's vineyard in Dayton for life and for prosperity. If Naboth believed that all things were created equal, Ahab believed that equality stopped at birth. Equality when everyone has enough. Justice when we take into consideration each person's story. Our individual and shared tikkun, olam. I'm going to begin with such a story. It's actually my story. It started at daybreak. It was on a summer Monday morning. I glanced out the window while I was standing at the kitchen sink. Almost without warrant, I caught a glimpse of him. Staring into my window was this disheveled man, looking chilled on a warm morning, a crumbled white T-shirt. Gray hair was sticking out on each side. He was thinning up on top. He had this weighted face that his mouth just kind of pointed down, a natural sort of frown. I caught a glimpse of the stubble of his beard, and I knew that without a doubt he could use a cup of coffee. I vaguely recognized him. His eyes, there was something about his eyes that were so familiar. I knew that he had more sunsets than sunrises to look forward to. And then it was one of those epiphanies that happened. I was standing in front of my bathroom sink, not the kitchen sink. I wasn't looking out the kitchen window. I was looking into the bathroom mirror. I had really aged. And I realized that I needed a shave, and I could use a cup of coffee. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm a clumsy ager. I've never done this aging thing before. I'm learning it kind of as I go along. Nothing slows this process down. And as a clumsy ager, I take on the attitude of my 15-year-old black lab, Frankie. I might not be able to chase squirrels anymore, but doggone, I still like to sit at the door and bark. Now, I love my life as a gay man. I love the gay community. I love the bawdiness of some of those drag queens. I love the naughtiness of some of that gay humor. I love the gaudiness of disco balls that spin and illuminate dark dance floors when we were all the dancers at some point with glamour. I love the counter-cultural experience, traveling with groups to gay pride celebrations across the country, across the globe. I love the energy. I love the tribal humor. I love the catty little comments. I love that easy shift of pronouns that the gay community does so well. When I was in my early 20s, after being dumped by the 2-week love of my life, I had my sad story and my teary eyes, and I took them to my therapist, bartender Julio, at a local gay watering hole. He put a stiff drink in front of me and said loud enough for everybody in the bar and most of the people in Dayton to hear, "Girl, you just got to be glad she's gone because she ain't nothing but a big old hoe." Now, in that moment, I felt loved. I conducted the funeral service on a warm Florida morning for Julio. An overdose of meth laced with fentanyl. He died looking for love. I still miss him. I grew up in relationships, I guess, that I really didn't understand. One with a Pentecostal guy who lived in sexual addiction, always believing that he would build a bridge to his badly damaged heart if he just kept giving his body to all sorts of men that would potentially be his healer. A river of brokenness no bridge would ever be built to span. Another medicates his insecurities with legal and illegal drugs washed down with vodka. After more than a decade of trying, we failed. I did pay a therapist to help me figure it out. She gave me this diagnosis. She said, "You, Tim Forbess, just have a crappy picker." But clinically, I'm a rescuer. Many in our tribe were called sissies and tomboys, bullied on playgrounds, in workplaces, in churches and synagogues and families. We were alive when Stonewall happened. We often went to funerals for another friend who died a miserable death because of HIV/AIDS or because of suicide tied to the dreaded words, "You are positive." We wore red ribbons. We stitched panels for AIDS quilts. We raised money for in-home care for those that were losing the battle. We interviewed our friends who were dying so that we could make sure to keep their stories alive. We saw the death of Harvey Milk and Matthew Shepard, among a long list of the tormented deaths of innocent men and women. We've known the people whose stories make up the awful statistics. 48% of trans people suffer physical assault. A recent study came out at the end of last year that said that even with HIV deaths diminishing, the Q plus community continues to have worse health conditions and a lower life expectancy than their straight counterparts. What does all this have to do with Longfellow? I need a place to age, to live and to age, where there is a sentinel guarding my dignity, a standard bearer that's honoring my journey. A place where the old man looking into the window will experience equity and care. I want to live out these next sunrises, however many are left, in a place where there are gay-themed films being shown and where the Q plus community art is on the walls, where Harvey's, the gay bar, can be across the hall. They'll have someone like Julio dishing out drinks and great advice. I want to be at a place where my dogs, Frankie and Clemmer, can age with me and have a dog park and have a place to walk and to bark, a place where they can find their dog spa and stay clean and bathed. I want that place where diversity is a gift to be celebrated. When I envisioned Longfellow, I envisioned it to be a place where cranky old drag queens could do a little show on a stage and take crinkled $1 bills, hopefully wearing this time low heels. I need a community, a community that shares my story, my experience, and with whom I can live authentically and transparently. The vision of the birthing mother of Longfellow was this: I just want justice for my tribe, a place that can make possible the idea that the best days are in the last quarter, where the most fun that we will ever have is in our stories being told together, not apologizing for who we are, and not having to hide, not having to compromise, not having to go back in some dark, shadowy place called the closet. Though I don't know for certain how or when I plan to die at Longfellow, I trust that the UCH community and their values, the wonderful people that are making this happen, Gloria Hurwitz and her team, I'm just so grateful that they were bold and courageous, and they stepped forward and they saw this vision and they worked to make it happen. On that day when my funeral is held, I just want you to know it's going to be an open bar. The date and time will be determined, but you're all invited for sure. But until that sunset comes, we've got to think about this neighborhood. We've got to think about housing. We've got to think about justice. And so, in describing this one factor, this one facet, that was the reason we had to save Longfellow. Now, there's another place just across the street. Rabbi Karen and I went there. It's within 5 minutes of where we're currently sitting. In it, you will find refugees who have traveled here from Rwanda. They arrive in a neighborhood where they feel safe, where they might plant a vineyard for a new generation. It works like many refugees do. They arrive not speaking the language, and they struggle to learn and figure out how to make it. And these refugees will work any job that they are offered, and they will sacrifice in every way that they can so that their children can attend U.S. schools and continue on to higher education. The second generation of these refugees assimilate quickly. They show preferences for the technology sector. They are a part of Salem Avenue coming back alive. Now, there's a young guy there who's all of 5, and his name is Dylan. And Dylan is living in a very tough space. A house that's falling in, a kitchen from which you can see the basement. The house of all people does not qualify for most government support because of the immigration status of those who live there. The budget for the 10 to 15 people living in the house of all people is roughly $40,000 a year, and that covers all of their food, all of their electricity, their water, and any incremental repairs that they can eke out. They work hard on almost nothing to assimilate into our community a brilliant future of people. One more house, isn't it, in Naboth's vineyard? Tikkun, olam. The Gem City Market brings needed food, space, opportunity to our neighborhood. The future for the market is bright. In just a minute, I'll explain why. But sustaining it while the growth comes in the neighborhood is essential. Supporting members are critical to its future. Supporting it through shopping and support is needed at this critical time as this newly planted vineyard struggles to grow. Most of you probably know Salem Avenue. I want to describe what I see on Salem Avenue. When our group purchased Longfellow School from the Dayton public school system, we purchased it, its 7 connected buildings, and its 3 acres of land for $155,000. The price was so low because it was the difference between what the value of the building was and what it would cost to tear it down. But we didn't want to see a neighborhood icon land in the landfill. United Church Homes came forward. The new build there is a $52 million investment by Gloria Hurwitz, United Church Homes, and their team for 125 units. This was a catalyst. After that, a group bought the Commodore just behind us, the 10-story vacant building that's now being renovated into market-rate condos. Up the street, another of my sister churches, Grace United Methodist, is preparing for a 160-unit build. Over behind us, on the old Julian High School site, another 260 units are being built. All of this within an easy 5 minutes of Longfellow. All of this because United Church Homes came forward. With the National Church Residents inclusion of additional work on subsidized housing, we're up to over $225 million of retail investment for market-rate homes in Dayton View. An unbelievable reality, which gets us halfway there. The other half is how to bring back single-family homes. How do we get beyond that appraisal barrier so that individuals that want to once again have a home built and raise their children in this neighborhood that has so much asset coming forward, how do we help that to happen? Something called the Neighborhood Impact Replacement Home Impact Fund is helping to do that. It's an impact fund that's taking the place of the bank in order to help do some of those builds. Now, all of this investment, all of this movement is helping Naboth's vineyard come back alive. But it's awful hard, isn't it, to keep moving Ahab out of the way, because Ahab still wants his vegetable garden. I think the work that we're doing needs all of us. You know, we've achieved incredible success in what will be market rate rental coming into the neighborhood. But now the neighborhood will need yet more. And this is our vineyard. You know, I love how vineyards work. They were always passed down generation to generation, and they were always called the blessing of God. That's why Naboth couldn't get rid of his vineyard. It had been passed down to him. It was a blessing of God. And I still see that little area, that little piece of land, in this little neighborhood in Dayton, as being one of the blessings of God, one of the incredible ways that refugees and Q+ people, one of the places where there can be true diversity, where we can bring back in the young and the old together, and where we can pull forward. You know, we are on that hill of making this the most interesting and making it the most desirable neighborhood in the city of Dayton. And we're halfway there, but the hill is still steep. I really want to thank you. I really want to thank you for hearing my story. I really want to thank you for letting me share my tikkun olam. Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, may all of this be your will. Sure. Thanks, Karen. I can do that very quickly. So Gloria has, by the way, Gloria Hurwitz, United Church Homes, they let me do this part, but she's the genius behind all this, just so you know. Her brain makes all this happen. And Gloria has brought a fair amount of data. There's some cards that have the QR code for Longfellow if you want to see what it looks like going forward. It's just absolutely beautiful. There are packets of information about Longfellow. There's a few of the replacement home impact fund things. I've got cards somewhere, and the Rabbi Karen knows how to connect people. She's brilliant at that, and so I'm going to let Gloria kind of add anything to that she wants.
I'd just like to thank you for sharing your story again. Isn't it a wonderful story? I just echo Tim's appreciation for your time today. United Church Homes is proud to partner with Tim for his vision to bring inclusive housing to the Greater Dayton View neighborhood. We are excited about this project. We are talking to everybody in town about it as we seek public and private funding as we move forward with this project. It's going to be an incredible addition to a neighborhood, as we know, was the glory day, back in the glory days, right? That was the neighborhood in Dayton, Ohio. So we are so excited about this. So as Tim said, we have packets available if you want more information. We have a postcard with a QR code that takes you to a website to help keep you apprised of the development as it progresses. We expect to break ground next spring, and it's about a 12 to 18 month build with that historic preservation piece. And then we'll be putting up a new building shortly after that. So we expect it to be fully operational sometime in 2026, where we'll have 125 units to serve not only the LGBTQ+ and their allies, but really it's welcome and open to anyone. And as a matter of fact, it's going to be a beautiful building. I might want to live there. You might want to live there. But if you don't, please come visit. So thank you again for your time, and you enjoy the rest of your holiday, and I hope you have an easy rest of your fast.
Thank you all for being here, and most especially to Reverend Forbess, who is now a very good friend, and I am really overwhelmed by the work that he's doing. As much as we've heard, there's more that he's done and continuing to do. And I know that one of the things that really was important to me, I went through and had an opportunity to look at Longfellow. It's going to be magnificent. And it's really amazing, all of the things that are so old that are going to be restored, that are going to look really amazing. But there's going to be a health clinic in it. And I didn't know if you wanted to speak to the fact that this is a community. I think you said 60% of the older community is not in access of that health care. Is that right?
Thank you. Yeah. So for those of you that know this neighborhood particularly, you know Central Avenue. And Central Avenue, right behind Longfellow, has 60% of Montgomery County's subsidized senior community lives in the apartments on Central Avenue. But there's an absence of how do I say this correctly? We want to increase, that's a better way to say it. We want to increase the amount of available health care to all of the seniors, Senior Plus, and individuals in the neighborhood. So the lower level of Longfellow becomes out-facing, adding a pharmacy in the building. For those who have been in Longfellow, it's in the Montessori space in the back. And also adding health care because the individuals that live behind us would then be able to walk to pick up their prescriptions and to see their physician, as opposed to having to be reliant upon bus routes or other people in order to take them to these places. We're also adding some services. There will be food that will be available at Longfellow. There will be a place to get, if you think about Salem Avenue, there's really no place on Lower Salem to get a haircut or to get your hair done or your nails done. And so we're trying to add those types of services that make it easy for people to live there so they don't have to leave the neighborhood to get types of services like that. And we're really excited. And there's also a theater company that has partnered with us. So we will have an in-house theater company that does performances. We're upgrading the whole theater again to be put in use not only for the internal community but for the whole community. We envision things. We just hosted the PK Pechacucha event there a few months ago, and we anticipate continuing to host that, TED Talks, information sessions for the community as an outward way of using that space. The gym is going to be a space that has availability to continue to be a gym, and so there'll be fitness components to all of that piece. And Longfellow will have its own radio station because, and I'm not making this up, I'm in a synagogue. I'm going to make sure I tell the truth. We have a potential person to move in who has 110,000 vinyl records in his collection. And he wants to have a radio station. So we have found a way to do an internet radio station that anywhere in the world you can tune into that internet radio station and you can hear the radio station from Longfellow. So we're working real hard to include the things that are both out-facing to the neighborhood and welcoming to the neighborhood, as well as providing a good living experience for the residents and people who are living there. And by the way, I should also add, this is being done by United Church Homes, which is fully interfaith. And so we are excited to welcome people of all expressions of faith and no expression of faith. And so that there is no criteria as far as that goes. But if drag queens picking up dollar bills bothers you, it might not be the spot. But it's going to be a terrific place, and we think that it'll be a lot of fun. I guess I would say it this way. I think we can live out the last season of our life gloriously, as opposed to the last season of life being dreaded. And so when we started visioning this, it was really thinking about how do we live our best lives to the very end, and how do we end well. And so that's a part of how, yeah.
It's you. And say I love. Sorry, can I say one more thing and then I'll give it to you? I would say I really love this project, and I love that this is so close to our old home, and I know that this part of our community is very dear to us. And my hope is that we'll be able to find ways to partner to help support this project, and as well as the Rwandan community across the street, which certainly needs our support. But thank you for not just having a dream, but for building, really, and we want to help build with you. So I appreciate it so very much.
Last word. This is one of the 3 largest Q+ retirement communities in the nation in Dayton, Ohio, which is remarkable. There we go.
I'm going to offer this to Patty real quick.
So first of all, I didn't know if you want to see if anybody has any questions for him. The other thing is, I work with Tim, so that's why he's doing some other really great things too in the spirit of tikkun olam and repairing the world. And he has some homes also that he's developed that are very environmentally responsible and also affordable. That I don't know if he wants to talk about as well, which is separate from this wonderful endeavor he's doing for Longfellow. But he's involved in so many things repairing the world that's why it's a joy for me to work with him. So.
First of all, this is so inspirational. Thank you very much. Has there been, I'm sure there's been discussion about the gentrification of an area and what happens with the people who need a place to live, and I'm wondering how you're addressing that.
Yeah, that has been a really great issue and one that we've looked forward to working through. So when we started the project, the neighborhood associations, we went to the Salem Avenue Business Association, and we went to the Grafton Hill Association, we went to the Lower Dayton View Neighborhood Association. One of the things that they asked for was they felt that the neighborhood was out of balance because of the overwhelming amount of subsidized housing. They asked us to make Longfellow market. And so and United Church Homes has a number of subsidized communities. So we could have gone, I think, either way, but it made more sense at that level to go market. And there is, even with all that's being built, the subsidized market still outweighs the retail market. And so that's part of the issue. But there's another way that I'm looking at it. So now we're also discussing new home builds. And so in the discussion of new home builds, the commitment that we've made to the city of Dayton and Montgomery County is for every 4 market rate built, there's 1 subsidized built. And the reason is instead of having such a overwhelming group of individuals living in a subsidized community, to be able to allow those individuals that are in subsidized to be in relationship to the non-subsidized community. And a part of that reality came out of a conversation with someone that I was working with who said, if my child is being raised in an all-subsidized community, and they see no vision of anyone but the subsidized community, then my child will think of normalcy as being in a subsidized community. So we began a real discussion about how do we do an integrated community that has the subsidized community working in concert and in community with the market side. Now, when we look at who will be the potential person at Longfellow, I think the vast majority of people, my career was in higher ed, I think as well as religion, higher ed, worked at theological school. I think the issue is if we can bring in enough volunteers to really work on issues like tutoring. A part of our thoughts about Longfellow is what volunteer opportunities will we be able to give to residents so that we can help residents. So it's the question of gentrification is not solely about how we make sure that the subsidized community still has adequate housing, but it's also how do we ensure that there's adequate housing, adequate representation, adequate services, and adequate support. Because a community that doesn't have the interruptions will continue to slide. Here's a statistic you'll enjoy. I went through 500 properties in the area where we are. The most recent new build home that I found was more than 80 years ago, which means that the houses around Longfellow, Lower Dayton View, Five Oaks are extremely old, many of them in derelict conditions. We have an overwhelming number of vacant lots, which then mean that the tax base and tax rolls are affected. But yet we still have to provide services to those same streets. So what we've really tried to do is think about what does an integration, a full integration strategy look like? And that's been the work we've done. We've done it with the city. We brought in some think tank people. We brought in Omega. We brought in the wards. We brought in any number of people to say, help us think all of this through so we get it right. Learn to Earn has been a part of this conversation. So we're not just, that's the whole point, I think. We never started this to just redo a building. We started this to bring back a neighborhood that is welcoming and representative to all people of all walks, of all families, of all socioeconomic levels. So I know you just asked me what time it was, and I told you how to build a watch. But does that get at what you're thinking about? Good. Thank you. Oh, please. Yes. There is. Yes, thank you. Yes, and we are actually, Gloria and I are working on a mental health partner right now. Not just for us, but that will be included in the building. And we know that, quite frankly, the population for whom we're building, we know that there is going to be a very serious need for mental health services. And for the neighborhood, because again, when you talk about deficits, there is a deficit of mental health access in this immediate neighborhood. So that is being written into the overall plan as well as for Longfellow. Thank you, and that's a great question. Yeah. So what we've done with the refugees at the Rwandans, and I have to tell you a funny story. I have a really bad habit. I'm going to confess. It's a good day for confession, right? I have a hard time saying no. I'm a really bad no guy. So when I went and saw the refugee home, and I'll give you, it's on Holt Street across from Longfellow, I was very taken by what that involved and what it meant. So Patty and I went up on Shallow Springs to see the Bruner Literacy Center. And so I'm in the process of working a connection between Bruner and the refugee folks in that part. So that's been the first step, I think. Right. Good. Oh, yes, please. Actually, when I bought the school building from them, yeah. We have, yes and no would be a good answer. The Dayton school system was concerned about who would take the building, about what they would do in the neighborhood, what access points would be there for the neighborhood. They wanted to ensure that whoever was going to be there was a good neighbor. We've talked more, I'll be honest, we've talked more to Omega and Learn to Earn than Dayton Public necessarily. But my sense is that there will be an ongoing partnership around how the youth services happen in the area. I know we're always grant writing, and a part of our grant writing is how Longfellow will be cooperative with youth services. We're also talking about how Longfellow can be a part of youth arts in the neighborhood, because what we're bringing back is not only a theater across the river, but we're also bringing back youth theater because our partner theater lab has a youth program that will involve youth, and so we'll bring them back in that way. But to be honest, I haven't had long discussions with Dayton Public. The former chair of the board, Mohammed Al-Hamdani, has been someone that has been a mentor to us in a lot of this, and Mohammed still helps us. But beyond that, we haven't been extensive. And thank you for the question. Yeah, please. Yeah, so I'll take the first part. Sure. So Gloria and I are going to tag team you because you did such a great job of asking two perfect questions. The first part is the safety and the security of the people were very important. And I'll give you a good example. The new build that's going in, when we first started identifying where it would go on the land, because we went ahead and have captured the whole block we bought an old transmission shop, we tore down Dolly Manor, all that kind of stuff. The new build was originally going to be tighter, closer into the historic building. But my concern is around anybody being on the back side of a building. You see what I'm saying? And so we pushed the building all the way back to the curb so that everyone could be front and center in all this. It's dangerous, again, for the Q+ community, there's no doubt, particularly for the trans community. And the trans community has certainly experienced a violence and a physical assault that is, to me, I just can't get my mind around that 1 out of 2 trans people have experienced physical assault. And that is so we really took a strong look at safety, security, how to have out-facing parts of the community in one section of the building, but how to have safe and secure residential parts throughout the rest of the building. There, as you can imagine, a lot of electronics in this, a lot of cameras in this, a lot of advanced technology that will be able to help ensure safety and security. Now, the good thing about the Q+ community is we have always been a community that were early adopters into transitional areas. We're also existentialists. We always like to be right at the end, think about where Key West is, and think about where Fire Island is, and think about, we're always kind of existentialist. And the ability to be all the way almost at the river down on Salem, I think, is a good existential piece. But the reality about safety and security is one that I think about yet more and more, especially when you're older. But the Q+ community have always been somewhat urban, somewhat resilient, somewhat willing to take it on, and we've had to become pretty darn resilient because of a lot of stuff that's happened in life. But so Gloria's going to take care of the church question, okay?
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, thank you for that question, because it is odd to think that a religious-affiliated organization like United Church Homes would be embarking on a community for the LGBTQ+ community. However, United Church Homes is a 107-year-old progressive Protestant denomination, for those of you that may not know our denomination, and we have had a commitment to inclusivity from the beginning. So we've been serving underserved populations from our affordable housing communities to our indigenous tribal nation communities and to our older adults for decades. So for us to have an opportunity that Tim brought to us when he said, I have a vision for this historic property. Will you join me in this vision? We were thrilled to partner with him because this is a project we've been wanting to do. So we're excited to do it. It's part of who we are. We're not just checking the box. But it's a good question because as we're talking to the LGBT community, many of them are hands off to religion, right? Because they've been so marginalized by organized religion. So they have to learn how to trust us, that this is part of who we are. They'll be safe here. They'll be secure. It's important for us to protect them and help them live their best life, no matter where they are in life. So does that answer your question? Great, thank you. And speaking of grants, as Tim said, I have a grant meeting at 3 o'clock, so I have to run. But Tim's here to continue to answer questions. He's happy to answer questions if you have any additional questions. So thank you again for having us today.
I'm going to go ahead and say thank you. And for those of you who are wondering, how did we end up on this conversation today on Yom Kippur? It goes back to some of the liturgy that we read earlier today from Isaiah when we asked the question, is this the fast that I am asking for? And the response is that we should act justly, right? Be righteous in our actions, not just fasting our bodies, but taking care of those in our community. And I really believe that having something that's inspirational and aspirational for us is a great way for us to spend this fast. So thank you for being here. If anyone has any other questions, I'm sure that Tim will be happy to answer them, and he's got all sorts of information for you. And we'll continue in the Great Hall at 3 o'clock with our afternoon service, followed by Yizkor and Mila. Thank you.